Hey guys, this is Matt again here with That Hand Works for another Battle for Zendikar preview, spoiler preview. So we're going to talk about a few of the cards that we missed in our last video. Again, I'm on MTG Salvation. Fantastic community site for Magic the Gathering if you're not familiar with it. Great forum for discussing card ideas and everything from speculation to play in all formats, including casual. I very much enjoy the site, so you might find me here. We're going to start off with Felidar Cub. It's a 2-mana 2/2, totally on par. Common, alright. Sacrifice Felidar Cub, destroy target enchantment. I think this is a kind of a card that's always necessary to see in every standard format. I don't think the card is fantastic by itself, but we'll see if we want this effect. Next card we're going to look at is Nissa's Renewal. 6 mana. Search your library for up to 3 basic land cards. Put them onto the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle your library and gain 7 life. Ugh. Commander card through and through. I can't imagine what deck is going to care about having 9 mana, because you already have to have 6 to play this. And then it gets you 3 more. So you're talking about 9 mana and then gaining 7 life. So if you manage to make it to 6 mana and are still alive with even 3 life left, you drop this, gain 3 lands, and gain 7 life, puts you back up to 10. Unless they've got lethal on field to do 10 damage to you the next turn, you're ramping into any one of the Eldrazi, and maybe something else completely ridiculous, I don't even know. I think that this is a good sign of what Wizards wants us to do in Standard. I don't think this card is great outside of Commander, and even in Commander, I don't know that it's good enough. I can see some argument for it, but even in a outside of playing with Omnath, Locus of Rage, where you play as your Commander, play him turn 6, turn 7, Nissa's Renewal, gain back any life you would have lost up to that point, and gain 3 more 5/5s. That's pretty good. But I don't see that outside of Commander. Next one we're going to look at is another Eldrazi. He's an 8 mana Eldrazi, Breaker of Armies. All creatures able to block Breaker of Armies do so. He is a 10/8. So he's basically an 8 mana creature board wipe when you swing with him. Because anything they did not swing into your army is going to die when he swings, because they are forced to block it. I see this being like an anti-goblins, anti-elf deck, where you're going to bring him in against decks that are just going to swarm the board, and he's just going to massacre all of those weenies in one swing. Again, another asymmetrical Eldrazi, though, which makes Guiltleaf Winnower pretty good, I think. Next one is another Eldrazi. We're looking at a 4 mana black 4/3 called Skitterskin. He can't block and has the ability to regenerate for 2 mana. 1 black, 1 colorless. He's probably going to be okay in limited. Don't really see him play outside of that. Coastal Discovery, sorcery, 4 mana blue, 1 blue, 3 colorless. Draw 2 cards. If you pay 2 more, you get to turn one of your lands into a 4/4. Maybe late game control. I could see this seeing some play. Put some cards back in your hand. It gives you a way to end the game through a 4/4 threat. And you probably have plenty of lands as it is if you've got 6 and you're in a control deck. So I can see this seeing some play in control, but I don't know about more than a 2 of. And I don't know if you really want this while Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruiser still in the format. But unlike those, you don't get as many cards. Well, you get the same number of cards, you just don't get the same card selection. But you get a 4/4 creature. That's kind of good, and I can see Control wanting that as an additional way to end the game. And you can still cast it for 4 if you really just need some cards. So, possibly in Control. Retreat to Emeria, 4 mana enchantment. Landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under control, choose one. Put a 1/1 creature onto the white core ally. It's an ally. Okay, well, there's ally stuff in Zendikar. And creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. I don't know, it's probably too slow. I could see it in a commander deck, maybe. Like an ally commander deck, but other than that, I think it's just too slow for anything else. Even in standard, because you're really only going to see value from this ability turn 5, turn 6, turn 7. I don't know. I just don't see it. Next card is Brood Butcher, 5 mana, black green. So it requires 1 black, 1 green, and 2 colorless. 3 colorless, my bad. And it is a rare. So it says when Brood Butcher enters the battlefield, put a single 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion, which we've discussed as the 1/1s that sack for 1 colorless mana. And then it has the ability tap a black and a red and sacrifice a creature. Target creature gets -2/-2 until the end of turn. And it's a 3/3. So it's a 5 mana 3/3, which is weak. It requires you to sack a creature. It gives you a creature to sack, but you're spending technically 3 mana at that point because you're losing the mana you could sack your Scion for, and you have to tap a black and another green to cast it, and the creature only gets -2/-2. Unless you're casting this turn 7, probably not great. And even if you're casting it turn 7, you're only getting a 3/3 out of the deal. And this is a rare. Limited bomb, sure. Maybe some play. I could see this. I honestly, I would want this in my Jared Golgari Lichlord commander deck because it is repeatable removal. So I can, and it's a sack outlet for pretty cheap. But 2 mana in a commander is nothing. So I can see that in a Jared Golgari Lichlord or some other similar, maybe but it's not because it's an Eldrazi, it's not an artifact, so I don't think Savra wants this, but I could see Jared wanting maybe that, possibly, maybe. Next card we're going to look at is a 3 mana Lantern Scouts, 3/2 human scout ally. There's that ally again. This is it is a rare, and it has the ability Rally. Whenever a Lantern Scout or another ally enters the battlefield, under your control, creatures you control gain lifelink until the end of turn. So if you have a 1 mana, 2 mana ally, you drop this, you swing with 2 lifelinkers on turn 3. We're talking about maybe 4, maybe 5 damage lifelink, and that's assuming you don't lose both your creatures in the transaction. I don't think Allies was really that powerful last time Zendikar was around. I mean, it saw some play, but it didn't break the format. I mean, Jason the Mind Sculptor was in that format too, so I mean, that's not a real good example. Cobblade was all over the place, so Allies may have been much better than it appeared to be, but I'm not seeing this in really any format other than casual on the kitchen table. On the kitchen table, I think it's fantastic, but in anything else, I don't really see it. Oblivion Sower, another Eldrazi, 6 mana. This is a mythic, 5/8 power toughness. Again, another Eldrazi with asymmetrical power and toughness. That seems to be a going thing here. Actually, all of Zendikar appears to be mostly asymmetrical, and the Eldrazi especially, so I wonder if that's a going theme. This is when you cast Oblivion Sower, that target opponent exiles the top 4 cards of his or her library, so it's kind of like the ingest ability. Then you may put any number of land cards that are exiled this way onto the battlefield under your control. Well, 6 mana puts it over the top of the card that really wants to see this, which is Blight Herder, which is only 5 mana, so that's not good. 5/8's a pretty decent body. You can block stuff all day long and kill tons of things. With any amount of ramp, you're putting this down the turn after they drop a Siege Rhino and just surviving. Just easily surviving. Smashing their Siege Rhinos and whatever else they swing in with. And it also ramps you by being able to pull out any lands that you exile. But if you're talking about if somehow by some freaking miracle you drop this against an aggro deck, or maybe like elf deck, which is going to cast like 5 mana creatures off of 21 lands because of all the creature ramp they have, you're going to get nothing out of this other than milling 4 and big whoop. Other than the fat body, not worth it. I don't know that Commander wants this. Limited 6 mana 5/8. Yeah, okay, all day long. Give me that. Casual, yeah, that's really rough in casual because you don't know that your opponent's going to be playing that many lands. I don't know that I see it in casual either, outside of very specific play groups. And that's a mythic. It's pretty disappointing for a mythic. Next one is Sheer Drop. It's a white card, 3 mana, 2 colorless, 1 white, sorcery. Destroy target tapped creature. I like it. I think that's very good. Premium removal and limited. Okay in Commander. Considering white casual doesn't typically have access to Path to Exile, or even really Swords to Plowshares, maybe I can see this, though I think Swift Reckoning is just strictly better in most cases, because it always destroys target tapped creature, but it can occasionally have instant. This is never instant. The only advantage to this card is really kind of more of a commander or a limited thing, because you have the option of paying 6, which there's plenty of white removal at 6 mana. The difference is this one gives you 3+1/+1 counters on a land, turning your land into a potential threat. I can see this in commander. I can see it in limited because it turns your lands into a threat, gives you a way to end the game while also destroying your opponent's bomb, assuming that bomb does not kill you in its attack. So, or best case scenario, what's going to happen? No, you can't even do that because you're not going to be able to play this at instant speed. If you could play it at instant speed with Awaken, you could destroy target tapped creature after attackers are declared, get a 3/3 and use that 3/3 to block some sort of weenie, but you can't do that because it's sorcery speed. Maybe Commander wants this somewhere in a mono white deck. I could definitely in a mono white Commander deck because you're lacking all kinds of removal left and right anyway. And this gives you just yet another creature, so I could see it, maybe. Next one we're going to look at is Dominator Drone, 3 mana, 3/2. It's pretty on par. It's black, so that's pretty good for black. You can see this maybe in a red-black aggro deck. I can see this in a red-black aggro deck. 3 mana, 3/2 is pretty good for Dominator Drone. It has ingest, so you're gonna, whenever it deals damage, you're gonna exile the top card of the opponent's library, which is on par with what you want to do with Blight Herder, and also works well if in a black-blue ingests mill deck with maybe Ashiok and Modern or more casual or something. It also has another ability when it enters the battlefield. If you control another colorless creature, it does not have to be an Eldrazi. Also, it doesn't have to be an Eldrazi to activate Dominator Drone, because all it says is another colorless creature. It also does not have to be another, or it doesn't have to be an artifact necessarily either. It just has to be colorless. So the Devoid mechanic totally works there. So you could do a 5-color colorless commander deck, possibly. Yeah, I don't know. But each opponent loses 2 life. That's pretty good in multiplayer, because it just kind of weakens all of your opponents. That's completely okay. 3 mana enchantment, retreat to Kazandu. Landfall, whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, choose 1. So it looks like this might be a cycle, because we earlier looked at a white card that did something similar. Put +1/+1 counter on target creature, or you gain 2 life. And if I'm not mistaken, even the white version had that same +1/+1 counter. Nope, it's not a counter. It creates a 1/1 creature, gives all your creatures +1/+1, so kind of an anthem. But that's for 4 mana. For 3 mana, this one gains you life, so potentially good against burn, especially if you've got lots of fetch lands. Um, Next creature we're going to look at is Forerunner of Slaughter. 2 mana, red black. I love red black, my favorite color combination. 3/2, so pretty good for 2 mana. And it has the ability target colorless creature gains haste until the end of turn. So for 3 mana, you can play as a 3 mana 3/2 haste, or you can play it as a 2 mana 3/2 and give another creature you control haste if you happen to have one. If you manage to drop 2 colorless creatures later on in the game, or once it's on the battlefield, if it survives its first turn, you can drop additional colorless creatures and give them haste as well. So I can see the advantages in this card. I don't know that there's any guarantee that this will see play in standard, but it seems like Wizards is trying to slow down the format. And I know last time Zendikar came around, they were a big mana format because it's all about dropping lands. But how many lands are you going to drop in 4 turns? And if some of these landfall cards require you to be on turn 3 before you even play the card, and then you're not getting value until turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, you're looking at a slow, big mana format, and that's what Zendikar really wants to be. So your aggro decks really almost look like mid-range decks because you're talking about paying 2, 3, 4, 5 mana to get your creatures out and really start getting in there. So, and there's not a lot of aggro support, so your most aggro decks end up being mid-range decks. Mid-range ends up being in control range. Control ends up being late game, really late game, 16, 17 mana, something ridiculous like that. So the entire format gets slower. I, for one, am a fan of this. I think that Standard has been really, really fast. If you want to play a fast format, play Modern. Keep Standard slow. It gives the entire player base a much wider variance in play style, depending on what you want to do across competitive formats. So I am totally okay with this. I think that Forerunner of Slaughter, if there's going to be a good aggro deck, I think it could be a good part of it. And I think that it's going to be on curve, and I think that it's going to give that deck something it wants. Last card we're going to look at for this video is a Veteran War Leader, 3 mana, green-white. Requires 1 white, 1 green, 1 colorless. Is a XX, where X is equal to the number of creatures you control. You can tap an ally you control and give Veteran War Leader First Strike, Trample, or Vigilance. Giving it all 3 is not bad. And if you have 3 other creatures on the field, you could do that. So turn 4, if you manage to produce a 4th ally, in addition to War Leader, you tap the first 2 to give it First Strike, Vigilance, tap the last one to give it Trample, and then it becomes a 4 power, 4 toughness, First Strike, Vigilant, Trample. That's a rare. I don't know. So far, they haven't produced anything for allies that makes me think it's going to be a viable format or viable deck type. The only thing that allies has going for it is the fact that Collected Company is in the format. Without Collected Company, this deck has no game, I don't think. And Lantern Scout and Veteran War Leader are both under 3 mana, so they can be put into play with Collected Company and give your entire team lifelink for the turn or whatever. And then you have this white enchantment, which on turn 4 you drop a land. Turn 5, because you turn 4 you drop your 4th land and then play this card, so you don't get the ally that turn. So unless you happen to have a fetch on field, but then you're going to have to crack the fetch in order to play this anyway, so that doesn't work. I don't know. So far they have not printed anything that makes me think that Allies is going to be a legitimate contender in the format, so we'll have to keep our eyes peeled for that. I'd really like to see... I like tribal decks. I think that they deserve attention. I haven't seen any elves yet, though I think the last time we were in Zendikar they had some elves. We've got 1 vampire, and I know Goblins was mildly supported well, Goblin Guide was from last time we were in Zendikar. So definitely we're going to have some tribal support here, but we'll have to see what elves brings because we haven't seen anything else yet. Again, my name is Matt. I'm here with That Hand Works. If you liked our content, go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe. Give some comments. Let us know what you think about the cards so far. What you think this format's going to look like. If you see any kind of maybe some deck archetypes sprouting up, let us know that as well. If there's a deck you'd like us to build, let us know that as well. Maybe we'll try and put it together for you guys, and you can do a deck tech and maybe play some matches and let you know how that goes. But again, thanks for the watch, guys. You have a good day and keep playing.